where children acquire their language patterns. Think for a moment, the average kid in the average day, where do they get the majority of their language input? Probably it's going to be a toss-up between the top two, which would either be peers or the media, right? So it kind of depends. If they're the extroverted type and they're out running around with other kids, it would be peers. And if they live in an environment where they get to watch a lot of television or sit around listening to the radio, reading, comic books, we'd have to say the media. But I would bet those are the top two sources that if you were to say, where does the language come from that these kids get the most of, right? Those would be the top two. What's the number 3 source of language patterns? Family, home, or interaction with adults in a classroom, right? I would put reading as the number 4 source, personally, probably in most kids' life. There are going to be a few exceptions, but in general. Now, let us look at these 4 sources in terms of their value to what we want, which is creating a database, a bank, a rich bank of reliably correct and sophisticated language patterns. Could we say that peer interactions provide a source of reliably correct and somewhat sophisticated language patterns? No. I think we could all agree that the level of linguistic interaction between kids tends to sink to the lowest common denominator, which is why age segregation is a bad idea for children. Children will always develop better language if they can spend more time with people who are older than them or younger than them. So when you put, 35 9-year-olds together for 6 hours a day, you're actually unintentionally creating the worst possible linguistic environment. Unless you control it very tightly, which basically means everybody sit down, shut up, and speak when you have a chance. Of course, that's not a particularly good environment for developing a linguistic pattern. So those of you who teach in a classroom with age-segregated groups, you are fighting an uphill battle. Now, if you put kids with ones who are older, what immediately happens? They'll start to hear a little bit more sophisticated language. If you put children with those who are younger, what happens? They rise up to their individual potential because they're in a mentorship, in a teaching role. So they'll actually speak to younger children sometimes in a more correct and careful way than they will speak to their peers.